Hey guys, welcome to PhoneArena's side-by-side video comparison of the original Motorola DROID and of course its successor, the Motorola DROID 2. It's been 9 months since the original handset was brought into the market, and in that time it's been treated to a lot of updates, especially from Eclair Android 2.0 to Android 2.1, and now finally we're getting a first treatment of Android 2.2 Froyo. It also brought Android to the mainstream just because of its fantastic design, and it showcased what the platform has to offer. And the DROID 2 has its advantages under the hood, such as the 1 GHz processor and also the better keyboard, which we explained in our video review of it. But we know that there's probably some people still holding on to the original DROID, and they're probably wondering whether or not it's a good option to move to the DROID 2. So in this comparison, we'll check out both handsets to see how they stack up against one another. When the DROID was originally launched back in November, we were really impressed with its industrial design, and for Motorola it's definitely refreshing, and to this day it still proves to be one attractive device just because of its overall dimensions. It's a very thin device that packs a landscape sliding keyboard. With the DROID 2 though, they really didn't change too much. It basically has the same look. On paper though, the DROID 2 is slightly longer and wider than the DROID, but as you can tell, you barely notice the difference. They both still come in at 0.54 inches thick. It's still impressive just because they both offer a landscape sliding keyboard. With the original DROID, they had a lot more angular design elements with it, as you could tell, where on the DROID 2 it's a little bit more curved all around. So it's only just slight cosmetics that are different about it. With the back cover, the DROID 2 has this bluish color to it. The DROID has a black one. The thing that we noticed with the DROID 2 is that it's a little bit harder to remove the back cover, which was an issue for some owners with the original DROID, so they did fix that, or they did address it. It still has that soft touch feeling material, and the construction on both handsets are just fantastic. There's no difference between the way they are built. Still have that landscape sliding mechanism too, so there's no change. And as the old good saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's only natural for most people to think that a newer handset would offer a better display than the original, but in fact with the DROID 2, it sticks to the same exact display found on the original DROID. They both measure up at 3.7 inches, they have a resolution of 480 by 854, and support for 16.7 million colors, so there's no difference whatsoever. They both offer great pixel density, so you're going to be able to read whatever's on screen with no problems. Even the tiniest text look pretty clear and crisp. But some people would probably think of it as a bad thing just because there's no improvements. But when you compare it to other Android handsets out there, especially like the Incredible or even the HTC Vivo 4G and even the Galaxy S, those devices utilize WVGA displays, where the DROID handsets offer a little bit better resolution. Right below the touchscreens, you have the same set of touch-sensitive buttons, just slightly different layout, but basically the same thing. We're hoping to see a little bit difference with the DROID 2 with physical ones, but of course, it stays true to the original DROID. We still had a tendency of actually hitting them by accident when we use the on-screen keyboards. On the left-hand side, same exact layout. You have just a micro USB port with the LED indicator. On the right side, same exact thing too. You have the volume rockers and of course the shutter keys. We actually prefer the buttons on the original DROID, just because they're a lot bigger. They're a little bit easier to feel out too, where on the DROID 2, they're a little bit more flush or built into the surface, so you have a little bit harder time actually pressing them. Well, on the top, same exact thing. You got the 3.5mm headset jacks on both, no different, and the dedicated power button. Again, as you notice, the original DROID has slightly larger one compared to the DROID 2, so it made it a lot easier to press the button. On the back, same exact layout too. You have the 5-megapixel autofocus cameras in the same layout and dual LED flash, and you have the grill for the speaker, so no difference. And finally, when you remove the back covers, you of course get access to the batteries, but we were hoping to see the micro SD card slot moved elsewhere, but they're both in the same spot. Now with the DROID 2's keyboard versus the original DROID, it has some improvements with it. The biggest thing, as you could tell right now, is just that on the DROID 2, it's missing the D-pad, the 5-way D-pad, which some people might miss just because it made great for gaming. But instead, with the DROID 2, they rely on these 4 directional buttons. But when we take a closer look here, I'll show you just the difference. With the original Droid, you could tell that buttons are a little bit squarish in shape. With the Droid 2, they're a little bit longer. Some keys are longer, obviously, such as the Shift key and also the Enter key, while everything pretty much remains evenly sized on the original Droid. The great improvement about the Droid 2 is the fact that buttons are a little bit more rounded towards the middle. They're bubbled, where on the Droid they're completely flush to the surface, so you had a little bit hard time distinguishing each button when you hold it in your hand. We do like the responsive feel of the Droid 2's keyboard. It's a lot better than the original Droid, but after a while, either handset, to tell you the truth, most people probably get used to typing on them. But from out-of-the-box experience, the Droid 2 definitely offered a better keyboard than the original Droid. As far as the platform experience goes on both handsets, they're ultimately going to function the same just because they both employ Android 2.2 Froyo. On the Droid 2, it's powered by a 1 GHz processor, while on the Droid, it's a 600 MHz one. And as you can tell, the Droid 2 is a little bit more responsive as we're moving about the home screens here. That's the only noticeable difference, but as far as like opening up different applications and even just scrolling, it's pretty much going to remain the same. It's not something really different between the two, so the experience ultimately is not going to be too different. You have the customized experience on the Droid 2, similar to the Droid X, while on the original Droid, it's just your stock experience with Android 2.2 Froyo. You're presented with, I believe, five home screens on the Droid, where on the Droid 2, it's 7. But ultimately, with lots of personalization with the Android market, you could beautify the home screens to your own personal taste. And as far as speed, navigating about the platform, we didn't notice anything substantially better with the Droid 2, so either or would probably be beneficial to you. As we mentioned earlier, the Droid 2 offers support for Flash 10.1 out of the box, where hopefully the original Droid will get that support with an update very soon. As you could tell, the Flash content will play on the Droid 2, where it won't on the original Droid. Overall, though, the web browsing experience is going to be the same. You could just double tap to zoom in, and the great thing about the Android browser is that it'll automatically resize the text. Scrolling is pretty much the same on both handsets, no difference, very quick. Probably one of the better handsets that offers great web browsing performance. You also have multi-tap gesture support, so you could zoom in by using pinch gestures, which is nice. And overall, we're pretty satisfied with the browsing experience on both handsets. It's just that right now the Droid 2 has that slight edge. That's because it has that somewhat desktop-like feel with support for Flash 10.1. Since the Droid 2 has a faster processor than the original Droid, it's going to offer a little bit better graphical enhancements over the original handset here. For example, the gallery app on the Droid 2 has some 3D-like effects that are found with it where it's lacking on the original Droid. When you put the handset to landscape, and we'll show you this real quick here, as we're just browsing through some of our pictures here. The Droid will just display in a grid-like format, where on the Droid 2 it has that 3D effect, which is definitely nice just because it makes it a little bit pleasing to the eye, but to tell you the truth, the functionality is basically going to be the same. As far as the music player goes on both handsets, they're actually going to be the same aside from some different looking icons and the color scheme, but ultimately the presentation remains intact. You have your album cover, you have some information, and also your on-screen controls. With the Droid 2, however, when you press the album cover, it's going to give you a nifty looking visualization. That's something that's not offered with the Droid. In addition, you have also some audio effects you could turn on the Droid 2, such as the equalizer settings, which provide for different tunes specific to the genre of music you're playing. As far as the quality of the speaker on both handsets, the Droid original one actually produced stronger tones, a little bit louder when you have the equalizer setting set off on the Droid 2, but we prefer the Droid 2 just because it sounded a little bit more natural and it didn't crackle as much like the original Droid. If you're more of an on-screen keyboard type of person, you'll find the experience on both the Droid and Droid 2 to be very satisfying. With the Droid, though, you're only presented with the stock Android keyboard, while on the Droid 2, you have two options. You have the multi-touch keyboard, which we have up right now, and of course the swipe keyboard. As far as responsiveness goes, we definitely like the feel of the Droid 2, just because it's a little bit faster, a little more responsive, but still, it's going to provide pretty good experience on both handsets. If you're really good with the swipe keyboard, though, it can prove to be a little bit better just because there's a less tendency to actually hit the touch-sensitive buttons. And of course, when you flip them to the side, you'll be presented with the landscape options, which of course will provide for a good experience, just because it's a little bit more spacious, and the experience is pretty much no different from one another. And finally, as the last resort, you'll have the physical keyboards as to use if you prefer, and of course it's going to be the best experience. Like we said earlier, both handsets still offer the same 5-megapixel autofocus camera, so there's nothing really advantageous with the DROID 2, even though it's newer. On the top we have samples with the DROID 2, at the bottom we have ones from the DROID. As far as outdoor images are concerned, the quality is basically the same. They produce a lot of detail, and color production was pretty much on par with one another, and you can't tell the difference between the two. So both perform handsomely in outdoor conditions where there's plenty of light. But indoor quality is a little bit different. The bottom again is the DROID, the top is DROID 2. There's just a little bit more noise in low lighting conditions found on the DROID 2 than there was on the DROID. And on top of that, when you use the dual LED flash, as you can tell from a distance of 3 feet here, the original DROID produced a little bit better colors. The ones on the DROID 2 are a little bit washed out. Even when connected to a computer, it still produces the same type of images. It just feels like the DROID's dual LED flash did a better job than the DROID 2's. But to tell you the truth, in the end, both handsets still offer a good experience. As we just saw, the DROID did a better job in taking photos in low lighting conditions than the DROID 2, but when it comes down to taking videos though, it's all DROID 2, hands down. Both are still going to give you that DVD-like quality, so there's going to be a good amount of detail in your videos, but the DROID 2 captures it at a rate of 30 frames per second versus the DROID's 24 frames per second, so it's a lot more smooth looking. The original DROID just has like a slight choppy look or jerky movement to it, but to tell you the truth, they're both going to provide for a decent experience. When it comes down to playing videos, we managed to load up 2 different trailers, and both handsets worked flawlessly, didn't stutter or have any lag issues, so watching videos is no problem between the two. Calling quality was nearly identical with both handsets. We like the fact that the earpiece produced some strong tones, which made it very easy for us to hear our callers. Although on the DROID 2, our callers sounded somewhat choppy. On top of it, there was some static sound on our end that we could hear on both handsets, but it wasn't that bad at all. When we switched over to using the speakerphone, as we said earlier, the DROID produced some stronger tones than the DROID 2, but when we set down the volume a little bit, it produced for some pretty decent audible tones, which made it rather easy for us to hear our callers. As far as battery life is concerned with both handsets, on the DROID 2, the 1 GHz processor is optimized for better power consumption than the DROID. That's why we managed to get 9.5 hours of talk time as opposed to the 7 hours of talk time on the DROID, even though they use both of the same capacity batteries. So there you have it, guys. That's pretty much it as far as the comparison is concerned. As we just saw, there are some advantages that both handsets have to offer, but in the end, they're going to function just the same, just because they have a great experience with the Android 2.2 Froyo. With the Motorola DROID 2, it packs the newer internals, such as the faster 1 GHz processor, which can definitely come in handy down the road, especially for gaming and for newer updates. While the DROID, though, it's been treated to a lot of updates that make it a really refined handset. And as you can tell, the design still remains intact with both handsets. There's nothing really one that makes one better than the other. We have to look down at the numbers. Right now, Verizon is selling the Motorola DROID 2 for $199 on contract, where the DROID selling for $149.99. So if you don't own either handsets, we definitely probably pick the DROID 2 for a $50 difference. It definitely makes for a compelling argument to choose this handset, just because the newer hardware and of course its longevity over the current DROID. But if you're a current owner of the DROID and you're wondering whether or not it might be a good decision to jump into DROID 2, it's kind of 50-50, just because now that it has Android 2.2, it's going to get the Flash 10.1 support down the road. It's not quite clear whether or not mobile hotspot's going to come to it, but it still offers that same experience with Android 2.2. It might not be as fast or peppy, but definitely get the job done for most people. So it's just probably be better off just holding off right now, just because it still pretty much falls in line with what the DROID 2 has to offer. So that's pretty much it, guys. So if you want to learn more about either handsets or for all the latest cell phone reviews, news, specs, and information, you can check us out at PhoneArena.com.